Good evening and welcome. I'd like to kindly ask you to take your seats, please, as we can start our program in the next couple of minutes sharply at 6:30. Thank you. Can I also ask you, please, to maybe switch off your mobile phones, put it to silent or airplane mode or any other mode that there is? I'll keep not to disturb the program. Thank you. I believe there are a few more to come because of traffic and so forth. You may see a bit of disturbance later. For bathrooms and or bathroom service, it's outside. Disability toilets are outside as well in the lobby area. There is no fire drill planned this evening, so if you do hear a bell, it means there's a fire. The fire exits are to my left and one to my right outside in the lobby. Thank you. So welcome and good evening, distinguished guests and honoured guests, families and friends. Welcome to the 81st anniversary of Tilawa 1942, the forgotten tragedy. I also take this opportunity to welcome those who could not be with us and tonight are watching on the streaming, which is social platforms on Zoom and also on Facebook. So this is a historic and special occasion, and we have an excellent program lined up for you tonight. So thank you for coming, first of all. But first of all, I would like to invite Dr. Aaron Jaffer, Curator of World History and Culture, London Greenwich Maritime Museum. Dr. Jaffer is a creator of world history and cultures at the Royal Museum Greenwich. He specializes in the history of sailors from the Indian Ocean and manages a large team of volunteers who are currently searching for South Asian, Japanese, Black British, Western African, Caribbean, and Chinese material within the museum's vast collection. So, Dr. Jaffer.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to Royal Museums Greenwich. That's to everyone who I can see in front of me, and it's so pleasing to see a full lecture theatre, and to everyone who's joining us online. And thank you to Mr. Solanki for organising this event and for introducing me so kindly. I've only got 10 minutes, so I'd just like to say a few words about where you are and what we have here. For those of you not familiar with us, we're a museum, or I should say a family of museums, dedicated to ships, clocks, sea, the stars and time, and mankind's relationship to those things. So really quite a lot. I say a family of museums because you're sat in the lovely National Maritime Museum, but over the lawn we have the Queen's House, we have the Cutty Sark, some of you may have seen on your way here, and up the hill we have the Royal Observatory. We collect all sorts of things and we cover all sorts of topics at this museum, but today I've just zeroed in on a few of those things. Now, Mr. Solanki, in planning this event, asked me a very good question, and that's, well, what do you have on Tilawa, on this very important but also very tragic story? What do you have? Now, unfortunately, we have an enormous collection, over 2.5 million objects, but we really don't have very much directly related to this important and, as you say, often forgotten story. Just to give you something by way of comparison, I'm sure you've all heard of this vessel. It sucks up a lot of attention, the Titanic. Now, if you were to go on our online Collections Explorer and search for Titanic, you'd get about, I think, 134 hits. And there's probably a lot more in the collection, depends on what's been catalogued, what's been digitised. But As you can see, we have all sorts of things, the obvious pictures, paintings and photographs of this vessel. We have a Titanic-themed board game, actually more than one of those. We have a toy pig carried by a survivor, a very, very touching story there. And even these Titanic-themed swizzle sticks, which someone acquired at some point in the last century. We've got quite a few of those. Now, very sadly, if you do the same, if you go on our online Collections Explorer and you look for Tilawa, you really won't find much. My colleagues and I did some digging, and we've only been able to find actually 2 images of this vessel. These are in our outstation at Woolwich, very, very well worth visiting, and we have a goldmine of photographs and ship plans there. They are lovely photographs. We think they're probably taken by an amateur photographer, probably to the start of Tilawa's career. She certainly looks very prim and in perfect condition there. She's also not carrying much at the moment, we can tell by how high she is in the water. But these are our only 2 objects for such an interesting story. It's very sad. As a curator, I'm one of about 20 curators here at the museum, to be confronted by this lack of objects. We might have more in the collections, but as you heard, I have a team of volunteers who look for things like this, and this is all we've been able to find. But that shouldn't stop us looking into stories like this. And so I just thought we'd take a look around our wider collections on this subject. What are the connections to Tilawa that you will find in our collections? Well, very briefly, because I haven't got long, but if we explore this world, you will find, for example, lots on India in our collection. We have quite a strength on India, both before independence and indeed after independence too. So you're actually sat just below one of our main galleries, which explores the history of the 18th and 19th century in India. We have wonderful things such as this miniature depicting Zainab Mahal, a Mughal aristocrat. We, of course, have lots of pictures of Indian soldiers who play an important part in both world wars and other conflicts. And we have some rather interesting things from after independence too. This is then Prince Charles, now, of course, the king, visiting India in 1980. So we can touch on those very important stories. The context of, well, why was Tilawa sailing from where it was sailing? We can also talk about the other side of things. Why was Tilawa attacked by this Japanese submarine? Again, another strength of our collections are our Japanese holdings, particularly Japan going from an ally of Britain in the early 20th century to then a bitter foe and opposing Britain, sinking British registered ships during the Second World War. So we have things like pictures of Japanese battleships, flags like this that would have flown on Japanese craft, medals, and very interestingly found recently by some volunteers, money used for Japanese occupied territories. As I'm sure many of you know, Tilawa was operated by the British India Steam Navigation Company, and we're fortunate to hold a lot of their records and a fair few of their objects here too. Quite easily you can find on our Collections Explorer things like British India Steam Navigation flags. We have photographs of the interior of other vessels in their fleet, sadly not Tilawa, and also some of the places connected to Tilawa, like this wonderful photo of Bombay, where you can see Ballard Pier. And I'm just in the process of following up the African connections too, so different ports that the company had ships sailing to. You can also find its booklets, which will tell you exactly how much it would have cost to sail between these ports. And then, as you had particular interest of my own, are the people who crewed the company's vessels. We're a maritime museum, so of course we're very interested in people like this. These are called Indian seamen. also known as lascars, although that's quite a slippery term. These people are very important to British shipping in the 20th century, but also a lot earlier, and our museum really is well placed to tell their stories. They lived very difficult lives, and during the World Wars they faced many different types of attack, including torpedoing. So these really are a group of important people who we are able to discuss at the museum. Now, you've seen some of the things we can cover at our museum. Also, of course, the Royal Navy. We're not a naval museum, just a naval museum. We cover all sorts of aspects of maritime history. But we can tell you about vessels such as the Birmingham, which of course came to Tilawa's assistance. We have these wonderful ship plans, technical drawings, photographs of the type of plane that would have gone out to look for survivors, and very moving, very harrowing stories from people who recall other events where ships were torpedoed. This is part of our larger collections, covering both world wars. As you can see, we can't get quite to those stories of Tilawa. We don't have the collections that we really wish we had. All collections like ours, even big national collections, over 2.5 million objects, have their gaps. As a curator, I'm at the mercy of what my predecessors collected. I'm at the mercy of what's been on sale, and I've been at the mercy of what people have donated to the museum over the years. We are, though, actively looking for certain things in our collection, and I would very much say that includes forgotten stories, forgotten images, and forgotten objects. My volunteers, I have about 20 of them, who are, as we speak, looking through images of our collection, trying to find some of these overlooked areas. It's also an active area where we're collecting, so hopefully we will be able to acquire more material like this in the future. Although, sadly, we don't have those objects and those images that we might like, I still hope I've convinced you that through our collections we can delve quite deeply into Tilawa's fascinating world. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you later.
Thank you, Dr. Jaffer. I would like to now invite one of our special guests and speaker, who's, I believe, come all the way from Leicester to London, Keith Vaz. Thank you. I know we've had to move the program around a little bit, but we appreciate you coming here today. Mr. Vaz made history back in 1987 when he was elected MP for Leicester East rather, and became the first person of Indian origin to sit in the British Parliament since the end of British rule in India. The son of immigrants to the UK who came from India, he is considered one of the most influential individuals on race and immigration issues in the UK. He became the first ever British Asian minister. That was back in 1999. He served as a minister, and certainly we'd like to welcome him to the platform.
Thank you very much, Mukesh. I am so delighted and so honoured to be asked to speak at this incredible event here at Greenwich. And I want to begin by thanking Mukesh and Emil for the incredible work that they have done over the years. They have made sure that those who have died are remembered, and that they have made sure that the tragedy that we have seen and that we learn about is brought to our attention. So I think they deserve a massive round of applause for what they have done. Emil is one of the most persistent texters that I have ever come across. If I ever end up in the divorce courts, I will cite him as the third person in my marriage, because he has been, over the last few years since I first met him, he has been, actually this is only the first time I've met him, in the sense that he's been texting me from Toronto for many years, but his energy, his devotion, his dedication to this cause, I have not seen from many people in my many years in public life. And I first got elected, as Mukesh said, when I was 30 in 1987, so I'm a very old person. But I've never seen a campaigner like him. And I just hope we in the United Kingdom can recognise his incredible achievements in asking us to remember this tragedy. So many of you have come here today because you have been moved by this incredible story. Of course, we have the grandchildren of those who have lost their lives in this terrible tragedy, but we also have all of us, some of us who didn't know about this a few years ago, some of us have got to learn about it, and even tonight, hearing from the masterful Dr. Jaffa about what is happening in this museum. I came here to Britain when I was 9 years of age. Unbelievably, this is my first ever visit to Greenwich. I have never been to Greenwich in my life. And I will come back because it seems to have so much history, and it seems to be some place that, you know, we have to go and visit. But I suppose because it's at the end of the DLR line, for those of us in Leicester, we go Leicester, London, London, Leicester, Leicester, Harrow, Harrow, Leicester, Leicester, Brent, Brent, Leicester. So coming here is like, really, we need a visa. It's like going to another country. But I will come back, sadly not with my children because they're probably too old, they're in their 20s. I will come back and marvel at what you've got here is absolutely incredible. How do we remember these remarkable people who are just images to most of us? Dr. Jaffa compares this to the Titanic and the amount of interest there has been in the Titanic. But this is just as important to our community, to the people from India, to those of us who are learning for the first time about what's happened, to the grandchildren of the survivors, those connected, who must miss their grandparents and parents, even though they never met them. It is something that will be with them forever. And when I saw Navin Kundra here today, who is by far the most celebrated British Indian singer I think, in the country, and has been for many years, I thought you might end today with the singing by Navin Kundra of the theme for the Titanic. My Heart Will Go On, sung by Navin Kundra. But he said he's had a couple of martinis, so it might be difficult for him to do so. But, you know, just imagine Navin is here, we are here, you are here, people drawn together, all with different backgrounds, to learn about the Tilawa. And we want to learn more. Cash, because he is just Emil, because he is just Emil. Every time he rings me, he's bursting with another idea. And just sitting here and hearing from Dr. Jaffa, I was going to suggest to him, and I'm loath to suggest this because I know he will take up the suggestion, maybe we can build a small replica of the Tilawa, and the curator can agree to have that small replica here in the National Maritime Museum. What about it, everybody? And then we can legitimately come back here and not just see a few photographs, but the actual life-size picture, model of this great boat, this great ship. When I was very young, I was told by a gypsy that I should never swim. And I've never swum since because I've been very afraid of water. But we lived in Aden at the edge of the Suez Canal. So we saw these great ships going up the Suez Canal through to Cairo and then to the Mediterranean. And actually, I've been fascinated by ships ever since. And this is something, the way in which Emil has given us all these amazing badges. We need to teach our children and our grandchildren about what has happened. And you, sir, have inspired us to do this. And if you can't find a home here in Greenwich for your model of the Tilawa, we in Leicester, Mukesh and I, will make, because we're both from Leicester, we will make sure we find a place for you in Leicester to put this amazing model. So let us have a legacy for this. Let's not just meet together and, you know, be friends and remember the tragedy. Let us look forward to make sure this happens. Let me say this finally, because you've got a lot of speakers, and I'm very grateful to you for allowing me to speak early rather than later. I have to return to Leicester. A very close friend of mine has just been at the Glenfield, and he's had surgery, so I need to be with him when he comes out of surgery. All over the world there are conflicts. As you all know, we see it on our television screens, on our social media every single day. I weep for what is happening in the Middle East, as I weep for the tragedy of the Tilawa. And war teaches us that innocent people, the innocents, get slaughtered during these conflicts. And I think that we remember them in the context of the 21st century, the 23rd of November, what is happening in Gaza and in the Middle East, what happened 80-odd years ago. We will never forget the innocents who are bystanders to tragedy and who lose their lives. That quote that I saw, imagine, as he put his hand into the water to rescue one person, others grabbed onto the person who was being rescued and pulled that person down. So desperate were they to survive. And I suppose it teaches us that time here in Greenwich is so important. Loving our families, loving our friends, loving our neighbours, living with them in peace is the most important thing, because you never know when it's going to end. So thank you for allowing me to share this evening with you. I will redouble my efforts to help Emil and Mukesh keep this whole issue alive, keep this cause alive, so that they did not die in vain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vaz, and thank you for that inspiring speech. Well, this is a fine moment for me to invite, and it's a proud moment as a father, to invite my son, Emil Solanki, to the platform. He's the founder of Tilawa 1942, and he will present the context behind the Tilawa 1942 mission. Emil.
The Right Honourable Mr. Keith Vaz and Councillor Dr. Dominic Mabang, the Mayor of the Royal Borough of Greenwich, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, families of the Tilawa tragedy. It is my great honour, after 17 years, to finally have this opportunity to have such a gathering here in Britain and to welcome you to the first commemoration of the SS Tilawa on British soil, the second in the world. How do you feel about being here this evening, and how do you feel about welcoming two known survivors of the SS Tilawa tragedy? To get our hearts and minds into the right frame of mind, why don't we watch an introductory video and get a sense of what our family and friends had to go through 81 years ago. Tilawa in 1942, it's actually the name of a ship that was built by the British Steam Navigation Company. port. Its route was from Mumbai to South Africa via the Seychelles, Mombasa and Maputo. It ended in Durban, and passengers were mainly Indian nationals looking to offer their trade expertise and look at new business opportunities. On November 20th, 1942, the ship left Mumbai for South Africa. There were 222 crew members, 732 passengers, over 6,000 tons of cargo, which included 60 tons of silver bullion.
A terrible explosion. The ship flares were going up. The siren was going up. Everybody's trying to escape from the ship.
At about 900 miles northeast of the Seychelles, there was an attack on the ship by the Japanese Imperial Army. It was the I-29 submarine. It twice torpedoed Tilawa, and after the first torpedo attack, the first officer transmitted SOS messages.
I had a terrible shock because I was only a teenager at the time, 17-year-old. It was but another 15 or 20 minutes, I think. We heard another explosion. That must be the second torpedo, and then the lights of Tilawa went off.
They were at the water. My late father, for example, did not make it to any of the boats. He was on a plank, on a raft, in the middle of the ocean for 2 nights and 2 days. Now that's a real miracle, as such.
She was in the boat, and suddenly she saw the water coming in because it bombarded. There was a big hole in the ship, so water was coming in. So immediately she took me, she tied me up here at the back, and she took whatever she can from the bag, ornament, she put it on. Bag you can't carry, but she carried me and immediately went up and asked for the help.
I think this story needs to be seen and heard, not just for my dad, but for the people that didn't make it, And there's going to be other families out there like ours whose families perished and they don't really know about the story or don't know anything about it.
There's a lot of unanswered questions.
Trying to understand why would a Japanese commander of a submarine first cripple the ship, wait 1 hour later, and then eventually deliver the coup de grace, which eventually sank her. And so that 1 hour is of crucial interest to everybody because that will reveal the mystery why she was eventually sunk. So we know there was silver bullion on board. There's speculation there was gold bullion on board. And we're not sure if the Japanese were after the cargo because obviously they needed to fuel their war effort. I've always made this point that had this been a war tragedy in the West, they would have made movies about it. It would blockbuster.
Organised a special memorial service which takes place in Mumbai tomorrow.
We're going to remember everybody who lost their lives on the night. And how fitting to have it at the very place and on the very day, on the day, 23rd of November. Tonight is a very, very special evening. I just want to thank you all for coming to make this a memorable occasion.
You know, this was a tragedy for our family we had no idea existed.
We have gathered here this evening to commemorate a tragic event in the world of maritime history. We at Maritime Mumbai Museum Society, along with the Solanki family, extend a warm welcome to all of you to join hands in reminiscing and acknowledging the Tilawa 1942 tragedy, which, like many, is a story that's lost and forgotten to time.
My name is Tej Prakash Mangat, and I'm a survivor of the SS Tilawa tragedy. Every year at this time, I think of those that died, including my mother and 3 brothers. May they rest in peace.
And it would be my great privilege and the privilege of the British Deputy High Commission in Mumbai if you would allow us to lay a wreath each year in our National Service of Remembrance for the victims of the Tilawa tragedy. The UK government fully supports your efforts to ensure that the victims of this tragedy are not forgotten. And I want to thank you for that service.
So that was some of that footage of the Japanese crew, the Matsu I-29, that was real. Perhaps not connected to SS Tilawa, but we were able to find footage from 1942 in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We thought it would be good to include that. So how did my father and I get connected to this tragedy? As you heard me say in Mumbai, this was something that we had no idea about. And it was actually back in 2007. I was 20 years old. I was in Toronto planning my wedding. I still had one of those little Ericsson cell phones, and my father calls me and says, hey, I was just talking to Bapa on my left, Rantorbai Nichabai Solanki. And so my father saw this random black and white picture on the right and asked my granddad, who is that? And of course, my granddad goes on to say that these are my parents, which of course was a little shock to the system because we thought that the couple on our left were my real great-grandparents. And so he goes on to explain what happened. Back in 1942, the gentleman on the right, Nichabai Chibabai Solanki, decided with his first cousin, Devjibai Bagabai Solanki, to make a trip to East Africa. And actually, the grandson of Devjibai Bagabai Solanki is here with us today. And he survived, but Nichabapa did not survive. My grandfather was 9 years old at the time. And when this tragedy took place within the family, it was incredible what Vallabhapa and Kasiba did. They essentially adopted my grandfather. They took him to Africa. They gave him a new identity. And this is something that we will forever honor, we will forever acknowledge, and we will forever be grateful for. Because, of course, if it wasn't for them today, my father and I wouldn't be here. Just an interesting connection with these two couples. It was actually 2 fleshly brothers from the village of Kocholi, Gujarat. marrying two fleshly sisters from the village of Kansar. And so whilst we will always remember what Vallabhappa and Kasiba did, we could not disregard the fact that here was a real human being with a real identity with his own wife and child, and there was no effort made to remember him. That was when I decided with my father to do something about preserving our lineage, preserving our roots, preserving our heritage, and understanding what is this ship sinking story all about. Well, it was the very year in 2007 when again my father gives me a call and says, an article has just come out on the 65th anniversary of Tilawa from South Africa. And there are these three gentlemen who have formed the SS Tilawa Foundation, Mr. Harun Tar Muhammad, who is with us today, Mr. Ashraf Rumani, and Mr. Imran Bobert, who were able to find the Transvaal Congress passenger list, as well as these two very interesting photographs at the bottom. And we're going to allow Mr. Tar Muhammad to tell us how he was able to find this very precious information. But can you imagine how my father and I felt when we saw Nichabapa's name? You know, it was like, wow, this is a real human being that now is beyond a black and white photograph, but he's on an official document. And again, that was an encouraging moment for us to now dig a little deeper. I was impressed to see Dr. Jaffa show those two pictures of Tilawa. That was a first for me. And now we can add them to this collection of photos of the SS Tilawa, which of course was built in 1924. And as we started connecting the dots, we thought, what would it have been like for especially our family? And I say this following comment with sincerity that, you know, the caste system in India is a real thing. And some families are affected by it more than others. Our family was one of them. We were of a very low caste. You can imagine what my great-grandfather was going through, trying to get a few shillings together, trying to buy his first suit, trying to get that passport photo taken. How do you afford to get onto the Flying Rani 4 or 5 hours down south to Mumbai, get to the Ballard Pier, try and find an agent to get a ticket for you to go onto the SS Tilawa? It was amazing when my father and I were able to visit these places for the very first time last year. And as we started doing our research, it was clear that Tilawa was doing this back and forth during the Second World War. This was 3 years before the Second World War ended, 5 years before the end of British rule in India. It was common that when you were traveling as a passenger, that you would go through drills, that there was patrolling of the waters. So for example, HMS Cornwall and HMS Birmingham and SS Carthage, they were often part of that patrolling. But on this occasion, it just so happens that, hey, Tilawa had no patrolling. Tilawa left Bombay on November 20th with no other company. Isn't that something? Then, of course, we were able to find a picture of the crew that attacked the Tilawa. We thought many of you who love Indian history would appreciate this connection. This gentleman here is a well-known Indian leader, Subhash Chandra Bose. Now, get this. When Mr. Bose had departed away from Gandhi and Nehru, of course, he had a different agenda. And about 5 months after Tilawa sunk, 5 months after, get this, Subhash Chandra Bose had made a connection with Hitler to bring him on a U-boat down the Indian Ocean and to meet this crew. And this crew took him to Japan for safe passage. It's just interesting that the very crew that killed his people 5 months before were now providing refuge to him. It was moving to see, we must pay tribute and acknowledge the rescue efforts of HMS Birmingham and SS Carthage, and actually, again, going back to what Dr. Jaffer alluded to earlier, that they may not have too much on Tilawa, but by actually going through research on HMS Birmingham and SS Carthage, maybe we can put more pieces together. One of the things that I had done was to read the war diaries that were quite thorough in documenting the activities of HMS Birmingham and SS Carthage. And for some of you who may not know, what had happened was HMS Birmingham was the first in the rescue mission, and they got about 674 people. And then a day or so later, SS Carthage came onto the scene and took the other 4. In between those efforts, there were others that actually were rescued, but then they died on the ship, and they had to receive a sea burial. But can you imagine being in one of those lifeboats or trying to get onto one of those lifeboats, or how grateful you would have been to be here on HMS Birmingham? We've circled the gentleman on the top left corner, and Mr. Tar Muhammad will tell you a little later who that is. So here are some questions that we can rhetorically ask that are still part of our research. Number 1, why did the Japanese attack passengers? It is our understanding that SS Tilawa was the only passenger ship that was attacked during the Second World War. Did the Japanese know about the precious cargo? You know, there were 6,000 tons of cargo, 60 tons of silver bullion. That's 2,390 odd silver bars. Did they know about that? Was Tilawa a military threat? There were 4 gunners, but were there any interaction with those gunners? Did Tilawa contribute to the war effort? As a merchant ship, why was Tilawa authorized to carry passengers? Why did Tilawa not have an escort or have its route patrolled for enemy attack? What happened between the first and second torpedo? Is there anything in particular the captain of Tilawa or the commander of the I-29 Japanese submarine said or did that is a key factor to this incident? Were the lifeboats and rafts on Tilawa adequate? Could more lives have been saved? Now, last week, I'm not sure if anybody saw this, but Business Week Bloomberg published quite an article, and it included a section on Tilawa. And some information was leaked that the discovery of Tilawa recently showed a picture, which we're trying to get, of lifeboats unused attached to the ship. And that was a bit of a shocker for me to read about, but by getting more access to the wreck site, we will be able to learn more. And of course, that's the next question. Does the recent discovery of the ship reveal any clues? Are there any classified documents that could provide further support? Could this tragedy have been prevented? So in 2012, this is the last time I see my grandfather, and he made a final request. Please find the ship. Please find the body of my father. It was peculiar because he was still fully with it, but this was the dying wish of an old man who was going back to his roots. Could you believe that in the very same year, Mr. Ross Hyatt, the director of Argentum Exploration, decided to find Tilawa? And they spent quite a few years trying to locate the location of Tilawa in the middle of the Indian Ocean, about 930 miles northeast of the Seychelles. And in 2017, they spent about 6 months scanning the waters. And eventually, with robotic operation, they found the ship, and they were able to find the silver bars. They declared them at the receiver of wreck in Southampton, and thereafter triggering an unprecedented international maritime lawsuit, which has hit the first court. Then it got to the Court of Appeals, and get this, on Monday, next week, the UK Supreme Court will hear the Republic of South Africa try to defend its claim of state immunity. The idea being that the Republic of South Africa do not want to pay for the services of Mr. Hyatt for actually finding the ship and getting those silver bars. Mr. Hyatt has won twice. We'll see what happens next week, and we are hoping that after this legal dispute, which we have no interest in as far as opinions, judgments, or conclusions, but once it's done, what we're interested in is the research, the footage, the videos. Let's see what happens. So my grandfather's wish came true, didn't it? And that was something that would then cause another resurrection in what more can we do for families like you. We needed an effort to get Tilawa out internationally. We needed to form a comprehensive educational resource where anybody could go and learn absolutely anything on SS Tilawa. So the website was created, we got onto social media, we wanted to use my great-grandfather as the face representing those who had lost their lives, hence also the logo itself representing the silver and the dark blue sea. With the help of Mr. Vaz and Mr. Kotak at Subrus Radio, Ben Jackson at BBC, we've been able to get the word out, and the press have been also helpful with various articles that have been written. And then I wanted to set up the Tilawa 1942 family group, a support system where families could get together, reminisce, to bring comfort, to support one another, to share stories. From when my father first called me in 2007, we had one photograph. Now we have these. But we are confident that there are many more to get. And how amazing to actually meet people who are on the SS Tilawa, and we will hear from Mr. Jani and Mrs. Mungat later. But you know, Mr. Chotu Kushal, who sadly passed away at the beginning of the year, 98 years old, from Gujarat, he had arrived in India around the time of the commemoration last year. We didn't know this at the time. He was going to say farewell to the world, and he wanted to die in his village. So, you know, we were able to get a Zoom interview with him of some of his recollections, and we would like you to hear his expressions.
First to warn them, and then second one to just put the timber down.
How much time between each torpedo? How much time?
About one hour. We are to take us in our boat, but the captain was supposed to go into the good boat, machine boat, like, you know.
So the captain was the first to go into the good life-saving boats in the machines.
Because it's overweight, the ropes gave up and it was cracked and it went into the water.
Yeah. It was cracked, so it sunk, you know. Yeah.
Okay.
Saw that. He witnessed the sinking of the ship. How was it on the raft, Derry?
Well, we had about 30 passengers.
Yeah.
So life is difficult. There's no food.
No food, no water.
And if for the emergency, there is some food and water under the
raft.
Yeah.
So he says there was some food under the raft. So I don't know what he means by that. Okay. Tamaru sarir raft ni upar હતો કે પાણીમાં ડૂબેલું હતું?
Raft ni upar.
He was on the raft. He was on top of the raft. Were you able to save anybody, Daddy, or help anybody?
Save?
Yeah, save or help anybody?
No, we need help.
He needed help. He was not in a position of helping anybody. He was not even a swimmer.
But when somebody was going in the water, we pulled him back.
Okay.
And we just with the boat stuff, you know.
Yeah.
You know, but not we. They say that Mashallah bite them, but I don't think so. Mashallah bite me.
Yeah. He feels that some people claim that they were bitten by some sort of a fish, whether it was a shark or whatever, he can't recall. But he was spared, he said. He was not bitten.
But there was some lady, so we took her with a scarf, and then we raised that scarf, and so that
People.
I mean, the plane could steer.
Okay. So nobody died from the raft, but there was a lady. So she had a scarf, so they kind of used that scarf to raise it in high up in the air so the rescuers could notice them. But he did get into the boat to bring him down to the water. And from the boat, how he transitioned to the raft, that's not clear. The rescue karwa mate બે ship આવેલી કે કેટલી આવેલી ship?
ship.
Okay, only one ship you recall.
Yeah.
And how did they get you from the raft to the boat, a ship?
He came down with a rope.
With a rope?
Rope ladder.
Rope ladder?
Yeah. And then we used to hold it, they used to pull from the...
Okay. So they threw down ropes and then they transferred them. Do you remember the boat that rescued you and took you back to Mumbai?
Yes, it was a cruiser.
It was a cruiser? Yes, it was a cruiser, he said. Yeah.
No, they knew already.
Yeah.
But they didn't know where I am.
Okay, yeah. They knew, my grandmother knew about the tragedy, but just didn't know where to locate my father. So she just stayed put here and prayed, I guess, for almost 4 or 5 days. And then my dad just showed up, right? Did he?
Yeah.
He just showed up. Okay. Yeah. No, that's it. He's made up his mind. He wants to take his last breath in India, period.
And we know, Pravin Bhai, that you're watching this program on YouTube, and our thoughts are with you and the family. Well, another dear friend who reached out from Zimbabwe was Mrs. Rani Sakrani. This is the only picture she has of a family member who sadly died on the SS Tilawa. Why don't we hear her story?
Hello, everybody. We are remembering Tilawa. Tilawa, the ship where I lost all my brothers and sisters, 7 of them. Well, I was born in 43 and this happened in 40. Stories I heard from my father's friends. My mummy and my daddy never ever spoke about it. And my brother, who was going to be on the ship, miraculously, he escaped going in the ship. His name was Valiram Nagrani. He told me the story about how he and his sister had to toss a coin who would get on the ship, because there was only one more place on the ship for a passenger, and already 7 of them were going to be booked there. So between him and his sister's name was Bhagwanti. So they tossed a coin, and unfortunately Bhagwanti had to go on the ship, and my brother fortunately came in the aeroplane, and he lived to tell me the story. Friends used to tell me the story about Naina Naran's father-in-law, who also survived the ship. And Naina Naran's father said that they were on the balcony, and Gul, my brother, who was just recently married, I do not remember his wife's name, I don't remember the name of anyone else but Bhagwanti. Anyway, Naina Naran's father-in-law was on the balcony of the ship where everybody was jumping into the boat. And Naina Naran's father said that Gul gave him a handkerchief tied with all the jewelry and said, I'm going to jump, and then when I jump, you throw this to me. And apparently he did throw that to him. Well, we don't know what happened. Gul died, everybody died, and Naina can tell you more story about her father-in-law. He survived, his name is Mr. Naran, he survived floating on a piece of plank, and the fish had almost eaten his legs up and whatnot, and he survived to tell us the story. My father used to take us to Baida every holiday and used to sit on the beach thinking his children would come. But we never knew that story because my daddy never mentioned about the children, and my mummy also never, but my brother used to tell us a story that he used to sit on the beach and cry for the children. Well, Tilawa, we remember, although I wasn't born, I see the scene in my dreams. I see the sea, I see the swimming of the people, I see everything as if I was there. I pray to all those that lost their lives, wherever they are, 81 years ago. I pray that they float away in the heavenly abode of the Lord.
Thank you so much for that moving speech, Mrs. Sakrani. Here are just two more stories. There were so many we wanted to share with you this evening, but here is one. Mr. Singh, his daughter was able to provide us this picture of the blanket that was provided to her father on HMS Birmingham, and she still has that with her today. Story goes that Mr. Singh was sitting in one part of the ship, and a mother and children go to Mr. Singh and ask if they could swap places. So Mr. Singh says, sure. Well, of course, you can probably conclude what happened. The torpedo hit that section of the ship, and that mother and children passed away, and he survived. Here was another account that came from Delhi last week. The daughter of Mr. Hari Singh, Mrs. Swan Kaur, who's in her early 90s. Of course, she was alive when she lost her father. Mr. Hari Singh was a well-known founder of the Gurudwara in Mombasa, Kenya. And eyewitness accounts say that he actually got to the lifeboat, realized that he lost or had forgotten his religious books and other important documents, goes to get them, comes back, and the lifeboat had left. We must thank and acknowledge the Maritime Mumbai Museum Society for their efforts in helping us last year. We must acknowledge the efforts of Mr. Alan Gamel, the British Deputy High Commissioner, whose promise was kept just a couple of weeks ago when the Maritime Mumbai Museum Society represented all of you Tilawa family members to lay a wreath in representing all the 280 that lost their lives that night. And here is the little note that they wrote, and here is the president of the museum, Captain Bahal, holding the wreath there. We have just received so much warm support from the retired Vice Admiral, the founder of the museum, who would like to share a few words with you this evening since he couldn't attend.
The censorship during the Second World War was so severe that a major tragedy like the sinking of an innocent passenger ship in the southern Indian Ocean was completely blanked from the news media. Even many years after the end of the war, there were very, very few people who had even heard about it, and the current generations were completely oblivious of the entire event. When the Solanki family contacted the Maritime Mumbai Museum Society to help in commemorating the 80th anniversary of the sinking, we were first astonished with the lack of knowledge about this event in Mumbai. Neither the maritime industry, nor the historians, nor the local government was aware of this tragedy. We decided that we would help the Solanki family in commemorating the 80th anniversary of the event. And it was obvious that the Grand Hotel, where the passengers would have spent the night before embarking on their fateful voyage, and also the survivors who came back to Bombay in HMS Birmingham, they would have also stayed in the Grand Hotel. I think that the Solanki family has done wonders to locate the survivors and to some extent bring closure where the loose ends had never been explained in the past. We have nothing but praise for the diligence, persuasiveness, and the way in which Emil Solanki and his father, Mr. Kash Kumar, who are descendants of one of the people who lost his life in the tragedy, the way they have brought together all the facts and found answers where the information was missing. I think that they have done a tremendous job in bringing closure to this tragedy. I wish them the best for the 81st anniversary. Thank you.
Well, we thank you, Admiral Rao. We know you're watching the program now, and we appreciate your warm commendation. So, someone asked me recently, why do you keep calling this the forgotten tragedy? Haven't you done enough? The answer? No. Why is it still a forgotten tragedy? Because there's lots to do, and we're just beginning, even after 17 years. Here is just a short list. Finding more families. Is anyone in Japan still alive from the I-29 crew? Accessing government files, acknowledgement from Japan, a third commemoration in Durban, South Africa, where the ship was destined to go, a place in maritime museums to produce publications on Tilawa, and perhaps even one day a documentary or a feature film. And with all of these efforts and more, and with your kind support, we hope eventually, with great confidence, we'll be able to say it is no longer a forgotten tragedy.
Thank you, Emil. Well, this is a very special privilege now. We're going to hear from those who were affected by the forgotten tragedy. Allow me the privilege of now introducing Mr. Pedro Ndombasi, a remarkable individual who has been a close friend of the family for at least 18 years. Pedro's presence and participation here today is a testament to the enduring power of friendship and shared passion. He has a deep appreciation for the Tilawa story and wishes to support our cause or work in whatever way he can. So please join me in welcoming Pedro, Tilawa families.
So we've seen her in the video. So one of the survivors who will join us today, Mrs. Mangat, and daughter Rooney. So we're just going to have a conversation with her and to hear your experience of this tragic event. So let me just start by asking, how old were you during the sinking of the SS Tilawa?
I was 9 years old.
You were 9 years old? Yeah. Is there anybody in the audience who's 9? Our youngsters. So I want you to imagine you are 9, okay? Just like our dear Miss Mangat, okay? Mrs. Mangat. So just imagine that, okay? And then follow the story. Here we go. So who was with you at the time?
My 3 brothers, mother and father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, why were you traveling to Africa?
We are going back because my father was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you were joining your family back to Africa. Excellent. Now, what was it like to be on that raft at sea?
I was in the boat. Not
You were in the boat,
yeah.
okay. So what was it like?
I was in the boat. I was alone without my family, so I was thinking of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you remember that took place during that evening, that fatal evening? What do you remember?
When the torpedoes.
Yeah.
I don't remember the first torpedo.
Yes.
Yeah, so I heard my father was calling my name.
Yeah.
And when I sit up, I saw the water. I touched the water.
Mm-hmm.
So he picked me up and take me to the boat and let me. Yeah.
My. So what was it like trying to survive for that one day? What did you do as a 9-year-old?
Just nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the other people? Can you recall what the other people were saying?
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
No. I don't remember it.
Yeah. So let's just move to your family. What happened to your family?
My family, I lost my 3 brothers and mother. My father and myself, we survived. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And how was the rescue mission?
They are fine. They are helping us. When we saw first we saw the plane was going around.
Mm-hmm.
So then in the evening, the ship came, and I saw the rope ladder was hanging on both sides, and the Navy helped us to climb up. And they took us to the ship hospital and treat us.
Yeah.
And gave us a blanket.
Yeah.
So that's it.
So I'm just a little bit. Were you with your dad at this time?
No, Dad was on the raft.
Oh, he was still on the raft.
Yeah,
so you were on your own.
Yeah, I was only the one. So
wow.
Yeah. Then my father came.
Yes.
I was on the deck when I saw my father.
Yeah.
He was coming, and
Excellent.
he helped me. He hugged me. And he was looking around looking for my mother and 3 brothers. Yeah.
Wow. And what did your father say about the incident? Did he ever talk about the incident
He
at all?
didn't say anything, no.
Yeah.
No.
That's not quite unusual because many of the families never spoke about the incident. So how did you find out about Tilawa 1942 mission?
The interview.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Johnny, you heard about it with the interview that they did. That's how you heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was for the interview.
Yeah.
That
With Mr. Johnny.
Yeah, very good. And how do you feel about being here today?
I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
Excellent. And we're very happy to have you with us. Excellent. Very, very good. So now we're just going to turn our attention to another member of the family, Mrs. Gill, who will just say a few words on behalf of the family to you, dear
Thank
audience.
you so much. My name is Rajinder Kaur Gill. I would like to thank all the organizers who have worked tirelessly to put this event together. Above all, on behalf of Tej Prakash Kaur, to thank all the family and friends who have come here today from USA, Canada, United Kingdom, Kenya, Sweden, just about all over the world, to commemorate this tragic event of November 23rd, 1942. I am the daughter of now deceased Pritam Singh. My father, along with my elder sister Tej Prakash Kaur, sitting beside over here, are the survivors of Tilawa. My father Pritam Singh had a first family. His wife was Ranjit Kaur, son Jagdev Singh, age 14, son Jasdev Singh, age 12, daughter Tej Prakash Kaur, age 9, and a younger son, Sukhdev Singh, age 7. On that tragic night of November 23, my father, Pritam Singh, and his daughter, Tej Prakash Kaur, survived, and the rest of his family went down with the Tilawa into the deep seas. As we are all aware today, SS Tilawa was sailing from Mumbai to Mombasa. Later, my father remarried on June 1946, and I am part of his second family. My mother was Balbir Kaur, also known as Gurdat Kaur. My sibling brothers, Jaswinder Singh, he's now deceased. My brother Harminder Singh, known as Nippi. Sister Joginder Kaur, known as Mattu. And brother Harjinder Singh Billu. And my sister Tej. We are all here present today in this historic event of function. The tragedy probably left a lasting effect on my father and sister. He searched for his lost family. He wrote multiple letters, telegrams to the Indian Red Cross, the St. John's War Organization, and the St. John's Ambulance overseas. His search for his lost family continued till about 1945. Being a clerk in the renowned East African Railways and Harbors, he kept carbon copies of all his correspondence that he sent out. In his lifetime, he put away all his paperwork away in a folder, tied it with a shoelace, and put it at the bottom of his personal trunk, which we never opened till he had passed away. And later on, my mom also passed away. Then we opened that trunk, and we opened that folder. My father's strong will and tenacity and sense of duty to raise a 9-year-old daughter gave him the strength to carry on in life. He remarried and raised a new family. That is why his family is here today. My sister Tej Prakash was surrounded by a loving extended family when she was younger, and later she got married into the Mangat family, who gave her a lot of love and respect. She is my role model. We can never forget the tragedy, but today I see the survival of my father and sister as a gift to us and everyone around us. We love you, Tej Penji. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for those heartfelt comments, and we certainly appreciate that. Okay, so thank you very much. So we'll be speaking to Mr. Jani, a spirited young man.
Thank you very much.
So similar question, Mr. Jani. So
No problem.
excellent. So how old were you during the sinking of the SS Tilawa?
3.5 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness.
You want to know my age now?
How old are you now? Please tell us.
I'm now 11 years.
Excellent.
Multiply by 8.
Oh, very good, yes. So who was with you on that fateful
My mother.
Your mother. And why were you traveling to Africa?
Yes, because I was born there. My father was working there. And then every 3-4 years, we used to get holiday.
To go back.
Yeah. For 3 to 4 months.
Yes. Do you have something else to add?
Just to give a bit of background. So my dad's number 4 fourth of the siblings.
Yeah.
The elder 3 siblings lived in India with the grandmother. So his mum was going back, spending time with them because they were studying there. Oh, wow. And Dad was the youngest, so she was then going back to Kenya where Bapuji was.
Yes. And what did your mom say that happened to both of you during the attack?
She said what?
What did she say to you? What happened during the attack?
See, I was only 3.5 years old.
Yes.
But what she used to talk about it on and off to other people, which I used to hear.
Yes.
So as I grow old, till she lived to somebody. And I was hearing that, so that's how I know more.
Yeah. So just with that in mind, after being rescued, what happened? What happened to both of you?
Well, after rescue, we were just sent back to Mumbai. So then I stayed in India for a few months, and then again we came by ship to Africa.
Exactly.
And my mother, because she thinks she survived because of me, so she never left me alone. So wherever she went to India, she always took with me.
Yes. Why do you say that she survived because of you?
That's what she thinks.
Yeah. Oh, man.
She thinks that.
Yeah. Can you just add a little bit more there?
So just a little bit of background on that as well. So when they survived and they were brought back to Bombay, at that time you didn't have telephones, mobiles. So the grandmother, mum, had written a postcard to the village to say that we survived, we're well, and we're coming back to you, to India.
Yeah.
So that all happened. They made their way back to Joria, which is their village. During that travel, the postcard never was received. So when they actually arrived at the village, they were conducting the 13-day ceremony when someone dies for them. And basically, Dad and his mum arrived on that day. So everyone was just
mesmerized.
Yeah, so that was like a big sort of thing for them. Unfortunately, his dad in Kenya was still in a mindset that his wife and child had perished. So again, it took time for that to go. And even when he did come back to India, it took them 9 months before they went back. And she went back on a ship to go back to Kenya. So that was a big thing for her.
Adding that very important piece of information. So how did you connect to the Tilawa 1942 mission? Basically,
Well, because every time, I was reminded about it, so I can't forget it.
Yes.
And my children always, whenever they get a chance like this, we'll talk about it.
Yes.
And they know more about me now. So every now and then I need a secretary to talk about it.
Exactly.
And this secretary doesn't charge me any money.
So just on that story, this is actually down to my sister Beena. So I'm the eldest, Balvi, and then Beena number 2, and we've got Dipali number 3, and Bhishma number 4. So Beena did the research, and that's when she found Haroon Bai's information from South Africa, and we found not Dad's name, but we had my grandmother's name, Vasan Labshankar, and child age 3. on the manifesto. So that's where we had the documentation from that. She kept in touch, and Haranbai told us there was more research going on, and then from that, that's where we met Cash and Emil, and the rest is history, you know. So it's
excellent.
Yeah.
And that's me, you know.
Very good. Yes, very young, handsome young man.
I was always handsome like that, you know.
Very good.
That's why I look like a white man all the time.
So how do you feel about being here?
I feel, well, it's all memory of my mother. Sometimes I feel so sad, you know.
Yes.
When there's a function happening like this.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel great that everybody remembers me and my mom, you know, and show me in the picture like this, you know. And now, because of my children, they are so lovely, you know. And my wife is lovely as well.
Yes, of course. Very.
I can't forget that, and I have to tell it. Otherwise I'll be in trouble at home.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnny. And
I just want to make one more quick thing around this. So Dad was number 4. With Bar surviving, she went on to have another 4 children. And so there's 4 brothers, 4 sisters. Unfortunately, you know, the siblings aren't all with us. But from that, we have now grown from what was a family of 8 to a family of 45 growing.
Very good.
And so, yeah, so the generation's still growing. The Jani name still continues. So that's a blessing. So thank you guys again from us, Jani family. Thank you for everything. Your support has been.
And I'm the youngest of them.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. Jani and the Jani family. Excellent.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Namaste.
Namaste. So next, Mr. Mervyn, please.
I've got my daughters and 2 sons here as well.
Yes. So let's hear a little bit more about your story.
Right.
Okay. So let's start with age, okay? Let's just get it out of the way. So how old are you?
How old am I? As of now, I'm 94 and a half years old.
Excellent. So let's just go back a little bit in history. In 1942.
I was a student studying in what was British India at that time, at a town called Belgaum, with my 2 other brothers.
Yes. Excellent. Very good. So this was at the time of the incident?
Beg your pardon?
This was at the time of the incident.
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Now, just please tell us your family story and the connection to the incident. So what happened to your family and the connection to the commemoration that we're having today?
Well, as you know, my dad, my stepmother, and 3 very young siblings, aged 3 years, 1 year, and 3 months old, were traveling on this passenger ship, the Tilawa. And we were quite sure everything was all right. And as we normally did, we wrote to my dad saying, hope you've arrived safely and all that sort of thing. And Dad was very prompt in replying. But when we hadn't heard from him for quite some time, we knew something had gone amiss. Oh, yeah. And we were too young at the time to take in the full import of the tragedy. But fortunately, I had an uncle and cousins in Bombay who made inquiries. And then brought us the sad news that the boat had been torpedoed. There were a few survivors, but my entire family had been wiped out. One of the reasons was because my father could not save his own life at the risk of losing his wife and very young siblings. You just put yourself in his shoes. People are asking him to jump in the sea, and his reply was, how can I jump, leaving these children behind and my wife? So that's basically what it's all about. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you for that. And who took care of you?
Well, we were very fortunate in having a maternal grandfather,
Yes.
A retired official of the Zanzibar government. When he heard of the tragedy, knowing my brother and I had been orphaned overnight, he immediately stepped into the breach sort of thing and said, look, I'm going to look after you all till you all finish your high school.
Yes.
And this is exactly what he did. And to this day, I'm grateful. I wouldn't be here today were it not for him.
Very good, yeah. Excellent.
Beg your pardon?
Neither would we, Dad.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that's my daughter here. Yeah, no, that's true.
So just, I mean, this is just amazing. So how did you cope for the rest of your life?
Good question. You know, when you're young, you don't know when the next chocolate or the next bud is going to come from. But as good luck would have it, we had, in addition to my grandfather, my grandmother on my dad's side, and several other relatives who were very close. We're a very close-knitted family, So, although our world had come to an end in a way, we still went on holiday to Goa, to our native, stayed with my grandmother, stayed partly with my grandfather, and there's tremendous love shown to us at that very young age.
Yes.
Which has stuck with me even to this very day. So I'm very grateful to all my elderly relations, grandparents, who did so much for us.
Excellent. So thank you for that. And what does it mean to you to attend the commemoration today?
I think it's to the credit of Cass and Emile, who have done sterling work, selfless work. Without their dedication, I would never be here, neither any of you would have been here today. They have really gone the extra mile in trying to ensure that this whole tragedy is never, never forgotten. It remains in the hearts and minds of all of us, as it should in the hearts and minds of the world. Can I just add?
Yes, you may.
So much was said and done about the Titanic. And I just wonder, in the case of the Tilawa, are we Indians less human not to be remembered?
No.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Our parents and all those who perished in that cold sea that night were human beings just like anyone else. Had the same feeling and all. And I feel it's a disgrace, I think, on the part of even the British government, I'd say, not to order this occasion. I'm only grateful to the Deputy British High Commissioner in Bombay who undertook to remember this, even laid a wreath and all that, But I'm sad that we haven't had anything from the government here. And I hope, after all publicity is given to this particular event of ours, more sort of interest will be shown in our cause. Yeah. We don't want our departed brothers and sisters to be forgotten ever.
Thank you. Yeah. Well said. And just finally, I think you've already kind of responded to this particular question. So how have the efforts of the Tilawa 1942 mission made a difference in your life?
Oh, in fact, were it not for Cash and Emile, this whole tragedy might have been erased from history, maritime history. But they have resurrected this, and it has revived a sort of interest in me, and as probably many of you, that, something has to be done to honor the memory of those who gave their lives on that terrible day, So whatever happens, however long or short I live, I'm going to do everything to support the efforts of Cass and Emil, and to see that this tragedy is never, never forgotten. As I said in the poem, at the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the wonderful sentiment that you've expressed, and thank you for being here and sharing your experience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 94, a bit unsteady though. I haven't had a drink.
So let's now call Mr. Arun Tal Mohammed from South Africa. And yes, you can just sit next to me and have this conversation. So thank you for coming all the way from South Africa in cold London. A slight change of scenery. So first question I have for you, Mr. Arun, is who in your family was on board the SS Tilawa and what happened to them?
Thank you very much. We had my father and his younger brother and his two brother-in-laws were on the vessel.
Yes.
And a few of my father's cousins were also on the ship.
Excellent. So what stories did you hear?
Well, my father rarely spoke about what happened because he was too emotional about it, you know, because he lost his younger brother and he lost his two brother-in-laws.
Yes.
My father was the only one that survived. Because he couldn't swim, and between my father and his younger brother, they only had one life jacket. But my uncle was a good swimmer,
yeah,
and my father couldn't swim. So my younger uncle told him that, please, you wear the life jacket, and we'll be holding hands, and we'll be there for each other, so that I don't have to worry about you. He was 12 years old, my father was 24. But he's telling my father that. And there was no time to discuss because the ship had already been torpedoed. It was taking on water.
Yeah.
So my father accepted that and he put on the life vest. And they got into the boat. And they tried to release the boat. There were several other people were in the boat. And they tried to release it from the one side. The one side came loose, the other side couldn't. So the boat toppled over and they fell into the water at quite a height.
Yes.
So at that point when they fell into the water, they lost each other. And ever since then, my father never found his brother and his brother-in-laws.
Yes. Quite tragic.
Yeah, it was quite tragic, and ever since then, my father would very rarely talk about it. Yeah.
Yes. So, when did you start researching the incident?
This all happened because of a coincidence.
Tell us, please.
Yeah. If this coincidence didn't take place, I think a lot of the information would have been available. What happened was that I was sympathizing with a friend of mine about his father's passing. And I told him, I said, our belief is that, unto him we belong and unto him is our return. And in my father's case, He survived 2 nights and 2 days. He didn't know how to swim, and he survived because it wasn't his time. So this gentleman tells me, he says, but my father-in-law was involved in the rescue operation.
Oh, wow.
And from there, I started getting some of the information. Like you see, that's lifeboat that's sinking.
Mm-hmm. So the picture there we're looking at.
Yes, yes, those are pictures that all came out of that. And then I had my newspaper article that appeared in the paper.
Yes.
And from that, I got the passenger list, and a whole lot of other information came out because of this. And I interviewed so many people, and from all of them, I got pieces of information.
Yes.
And we had started the website already by the time we hit the papers.
Yeah.
And then since then, I had people that joined me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what other survivors in the past did you meet? Is there any?
I have a big list here, which I don't think I can go through.
Yes.
But in that, I can mention a few of the significant ones.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Yunus Landry, who's that second bottom picture there?
Yeah.
His father is
the one circled.
The one circled. That gentleman was Mr. Ibrahim Landry. He was a jeweler that was on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And he had 47,000 pounds worth of gold jewelry with him on that ship. And he lost everything.
Oh, wow.
That was, and then I met Mr. Bulachita, who was a very amazing old man. He's prominent in the Gujarati, community from Johannesburg. Mr. Ranjit Desai, Mr. Malim Muhammad, and then our Mr. Morar. But very significant was Mr. Chunilal Nafsaria.
Why was he significant?
Because he had documented his experience in a memoir, which is on both the websites, our website and the website Tilawa 1942 website. So it's very significant, and he did a lot of research which already started way back in the 1980s. So Mr. Chunila Nafsaria, in fact, we have his interviews, radio interviews, some of that video that you've seen where his interview was recorded. Yeah. And then there was Mr. Keki Tivaria, who was also about 3 years old. And since then he's passed on. And several other people. There was a Maulana Qasim Sema, who was on the lifeboat, and he made a commitment to God to say that, take me out of the situation, I'll dedicate my life to teaching. And that's what he did. Like that, there were so many people. Ahmad Isub Bayat lost his wife and child. You know, he never really, this thing. I had spoken to the Nagrani family in the early 2000s. You know. I had spoken to Mr. Mervyn Masial also at that time. So it was very significant, and for me, there's still so many other people that I've spoken to and I've met.
Yes. Incidentally, just looking at the picture in the background there, who is this gentleman right here?
This here, Mr. Len Thomas. Mr. Len Thomas is the one that gave us all these photographs, the sinking ship and then some of the other HMS Birmingham ships. That's the father-in-law of the gentleman that I was sympathizing to. Yeah.
So that's the connection.
That's the connection, yes.
So just finally, so what...
I just want to mention that passenger list is the only list that exists at the moment. It's not an official list but it's the only known list. When you count the passengers on that, you still only have about 600. There's still another 120 or 130 people that are unaccounted for. And also what's unaccounted for is the crew that were on the ship. Now, I have found some publication with some of the names, but there's not many, because we know that there were about 200 odd crew members on the ship, but we're still busy with that.
Yeah, that's very good. So finally, what impact has the work of the Tilawa 1942 mission has had on you?
You know, I think Emil and Kasbai know exactly how emotional I'm about this, and I'm about, you know, I'm so touched by the work that's being done. I want to really thank Emil and Kasbai for taking this effort forward and breathing new impetus into this thing, into this research. But I think they know that I'm dedicated to it. We still want answers. We will know where. We haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, I've been at this thing for the last 25 years. And to reflect on the memory of our lost ones who lost their lives so tragically, I think it's only fair that we pursue this and get the answers, because they deserve it.
Thank you. With those sentiments, that just crystallizes in our minds the mission of the 1942, Tilawa 1942, and the work you've been doing in South Africa. And it's, I mean, looking at it as a spectator, and the story of bravery, of resilience, the utter sheer determination of survival, it's just unbelievable. And I would like to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
We move on to Mr. Praveen. So,
good evening to everybody. Namaste.
We will change the format of the question a little bit. So we will start by asking you, what was your father's connection to the SS Tilawa?
My father, Morar Jibun,
Yes.
was a survivor.
Can we see the picture?
That's his young age. He was 36 years old then.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And this was his second trip to East Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister was born in August 1942. So he came back from East Africa. And after celebrating Diwali, which was on 5th November, he and my mamu, my uncle, Haribai Gandhas, whose family is here as well, boarded the SS Tilawa on November 20th.
Yes.
And rest is the history.
Yes.
Coming back to 23rd of November.
Mm-hmm.
I started looking at this SS Tilawa in 2009.
Yeah.
And I put a blog on a website, and which was picked up by somebody from Anissa Hussain from Cape Town, South Africa, and she replied me to look at this website, which is where I looked at it, and I was really shocked to see 66% of survivors out of 900 people in 1942. That is a big number. Even today, if there was a tragedy, that big number would survive. So it was a shocking to see so many people survive, and to sort of imagine that from that picture there, about 50 people were in that boat. So they had to hit about 20 boats on the ship to rescue all of them. Obviously, some of them never survived, but to get those 20 boats into the sea within that 1 hour between the torpedoes is quite a task. So there was a crew members really working hard to get people on to sort of rescue them.
Excellent. So what did your father tell you about how he survived?
Okay. So my father was always boasting about his surviving. He would tell stories every day. And everybody in the town, my father was living in a town called Moshi near Kilimanjaro. And he would tell the stories, and the story was that he didn't know how to swim. So after putting his life jacket, he was wandering around the deck, and he saw people going into the boat, and they were overloaded, and the boat will completely sink inside. So then he said, no, I'm not going to jump into that. So he was wandering around the deck, and when he went into the upper deck, there were cabins there. And the people were locked into the cabins because of the torpedo somehow, and they were shouting to rescue them. So my father took an axe, the fire axe, and tried to break the doors down. He managed to open the 2 doors, but it was taking too long. And then he went to the upper deck, and he saw somebody, a crew member, getting ready that raft. And when they pushed the raft, my father saw the opportunity, and he jumped into the sea.
Yes.
He went inside, first of all, because he didn't know how to swim. And as he came up, luckily the raft was only a handful away. So he climbed onto the raft, and he was by his own. Then he saw people swimming and screaming, and he tried to grab one by one onto the raft, and he took about 20 of them. He saved 20 of them, and there was a lady hanging around the rope, and he pulled her as well in the raft. Then as the raft drifted about 400 to 500 yards, the second torpedo came. And within minutes, the ship sank. And there was pitch dark. Fortunately, on 22nd of November, it was a full moon. So there was light there. And for 2 days and nights, I think they were in the raft, and the water was going over them. And after 2 days, they saw a small, they thought it was a bird, and the shore was nearby, but it was a plane. And the rescue plane, they informed the SS Birmingham. They came and collect them. They couldn't get up because their legs were frozen, so they had to be crane lifted into the hot water bath. And the lady by which my father rescued, she sort of died, and she had a sea burial.
Oh, man.
So then he went back to my village, and after 6 months, he made his trip again, but this time with a plank of wood to make sure if anything happens, he's got something ready.
So just personal to you, so what does his example teach you? What did it teach you in your life?
My father was a hero to us, and never give up a hope. That was he.
Yeah.
You know, even in the grimest situation, you must help others, which we do. Me and I got 2 of my brothers and my sister and my family, and the great grandchildren, and the grandchildren are here. So we all follow that example.
That's very nice. That's very, very nice. Very good. That's commendable.
And the most important thing which this thing has taught us is go and learn swimming.
Go and learn. and just finally, on that happy note, what does this commemoration mean to you and to your family?
It means a lot to us because, I mean, when first I'm a president of our community, Darji community, and I wrote an article in one of our magazine, which was seen by Kash's cousin, Jai Kumar, who was sitting down here, and he reported to Emil. The next thing I get phone call from Canada saying this, your story and this story.
You've gone international now.
International, yeah. So it means a lot to us because it gets all of our family together, and they've done marvelous. I mean, they deserve a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Praveen. Thank you for
Thank
your
you, yeah.
coming here and sharing your experience, although painful, but we find joy in it. In
My
sharing.
father survived. That was the important
Exactly.
thing. Unfortunately, other people didn't survive, and it's very sad to lose anybody. So my father was a lucky one, and there was he had a favorite song from probably Kash will know from 1954, Nastik, and that went very good. If I am allowed to sing the song a little bit, it's Kundra
Please.
Bhai Kundra. So that I'm sorry you want.
No, please go ahead.
It went. हिम्मत ना हार प्रभु को पुकार वो ही तेरी नैया लगाएगा पार.
Thank you very much.
It means that don't lose hope. Only God will save you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You said your father saved a few people on pull them onto the raft.
Yes.
Did you know who they were?
No, I wouldn't. I was.
Because it'd be amazing if.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing to have.
Yeah. I was thinking, you know, the chap from Bardoli, Kushal, Chotu Kushal. But he said he was pulled up in a raft, but there is no proof of. So I can only. But we have in our community we have a very good interest in this Tilawa, because we have quite a few members whose family were there. One of them was from South Africa, Chunila Nosaria. My father survived, Moral Jivan. My uncle survived, Haribhai Ganda. And there's a lady whose name is not mentioned, is Parvati Kalidas. And the other people who didn't survive was Gopal Kumarji, Noratam Bhagwan, Ichiben Chibu from Kacholi, and Ishwarbai's sister from Bolton. So we have 36 people here from our community.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Praveen. And finally, Mr. Yogesh, let's hear your story.
Before we start,
yes.
If I can ask, I can't see because of the lights. But, my uncle, Ravindra, to join me here, please. Are you there somewhere?
Yeah, just pull up your microphone.
Sorry. And Pravin, whose aunt was with my grandfather, who perished.
Let's just wait for a little bit. Please.
Thank you. If you just like to.
Excellent. Okay. So why was your grandfather on the SS Tilawa?
My grandfather made frequent trips to and from India to South Africa. He was a merchant tailor. His trips began in 1927, whereby he conducted business alongside my great-grandfather. The business was G. Jinabai and Sons. My grandfather conducted business alongside his 5 other brothers. Sorry. My mind's gone blank, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Remind me of the question.
So how was your grandfather on the SS Tilawa? So he was a...
Okay. 2 reasons why he was on the ship was regards to business and trade. And second reason was he was escorting his niece, a third cousin niece, which is Pravin's paternal aunt. So his father's aunt was with my grandfather, who was 16, 17 years of age.
Yes.
Who had recently got married to a gentleman in South Africa, and therefore my grandfather was escorting her to her husband so that she could start her new life, married life in South Africa.
Excellent. So, what have you learned about his experience, and how did he survive, most importantly?
How did he survive? Well, my grandfather didn't speak much of that. He seldom spoke, but when he did, growing up, listening to his stories, he talked about how he was in the waters for 2 days, 2 nights. He saw some horrific things, which I could see from his expressions and his eyes that it was very difficult for him to express. He frantically searched for Pravin's aunt, who got lost amongst all the mayhem and perished. What it's taught me is that life is precious, yet it can be unpredictable. My grandfather's resilience, courage, bravery, and determination helped him to survive. My father was the eldest son of my grandfather, my father was only a year and a half old at the time. There was no other siblings at that point. Had he not survived, I wouldn't have my uncle sitting next to me today, and other uncles who are not here today, and an aunt who are not here today. It's even for me, it's quite emotional to talk about it, although I wasn't there, and I only learned by what my grandfather spoke of as my brothers and myself and my cousins grew up. The story goes regards to Pravin's aunt that, as I said to you, that she was being escorted to join her husband in South Africa. She was of very young age, 16, 17. Very little information is known about her, unfortunately, from Pravin's side of the family. We think her name was Lalita Ben. There is, amongst the list of people who were lost, a couple of names relating to that, but we're not sure whether it is that person. The story is that they were together on the ship, and because she was newly married, she was, amongst her belongings, she had a lot of gold. And the moment the torpedo struck and there was panic and things, she wanted to get her belongings and the gold. She departed from my grandfather, got lost. My grandfather remained on the ship from the first torpedo, searching for her, helping others to put on life jackets, helping others to get safely to the rafts and the lifeboats. Sadly, he didn't find his niece. The second torpedo struck, and that's when he took the decision, because he could swim, to jump. He clung on to, I believe, some piece of wood for those days and nights. When he spoke of it, you could tell the horror, the trauma that he'd experienced. As a child, growing up, listening to that story on 2 or 3 occasions, I wanted to ask more. I was curious, but I was nervous to ask.
Yes, that's understandable.
Because I could see the emotion in my grandfather's eyes and his face. It must have been. There's no words to express it. Just horrific. He carried that for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And how does it make you feel now to be part of the commemoration today, representing your grandfather and its legacy? How do you feel about it and your family?
Alongside with my family, I feel honored and privileged to be here, representing my grandfather. We're very lucky that he survived, and we had the extended family members. Thank you to Cash and Emil for the immense hard work gone into researching the event that tragically unfolded on the 23rd of November 1942. A huge thank you to them.
It's a pleasure.
I'd just like to say, this is one of my younger uncles, my younger brothers of my father. My father was the eldest of 6 brothers and 2 sisters. Unfortunately, my father and some of my uncles have passed away. 3 remaining uncles, one of which is sitting beside me, and 1 aunt.
That's amazing.
Pravin is a kind of a, how can I explain it? A cousin relation in terms of 3 or 4 generations. His aunt was on the ship. Unfortunately, there's very little information that they can provide regards to her. But they wanted to join and understand what happened that day, and in memory of their aunt.
Yes. And we are honored. We are honored for your contribution, for your... I know it's been very difficult for you family members to relate this information, especially for the 2 survivors, but this experience is really remarkable, and we want to thank you on behalf of the Solanki family and the foundation and Mr. Tar Mohammed from South Africa. I'd just like to say thank you, and thank you for joining us. So we'll hand over back to you.
Can I just say that, on behalf of myself, my family, a heartfelt, a deepest respect to the people that lost their lives and to the families affected.
Yeah.
Thank you to you all.
Thank you. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you for those experiences which were... Well, sharing the forgotten tragedy with the world is so important to us, and certainly for Emil and myself. And as Emil mentioned earlier, one of Tilawa becoming an unforgotten tragedy is by sharing the story through film and documentary. Well, I want to share this a little update with you tonight. To do this, I'd like to welcome Gareth Strachan for a few words, who is actually award-winning producer, writer, having plays produced in the British Fringe, or rather Brighton Fringe, Toronto Film Festival and Barons Court Theatre, as well as numerous corporate scripts for the advertising industry. In the Creative Futures Prestige Poetry Award, and in 2017 he was a finalist in the Literary Consultancy's Pen Factor Award. In 2022 he won the DIT British Embassy Pitch Fund for his science fiction animation, I Am Bots, and went to be selected at MIPCOM, Cannes that same year. This year he was named Producer to Watch at MIPS TV in Cannes. Gareth.
We always sound better on paper, don't we? I'm going to just read you how my role in this began. So on the 3rd of May, I received the following LinkedIn message. Hey Gareth, how are you? Hello Emil, I'm fine. Yourself? Not bad, mate. Looking to work with a scriptwriter. Are you available for a quick chat? Got a very special project that has a British India twist, the Indian Titanic story based on true events, a family tragedy. Lost my great-grandfather on the SS Tilawa ship. We've come a long way from that LinkedIn message, Emil, and I have to be honest with you, when we spoke, the first thing I said to Emil was, you do know I'm a little white guy. And he said, that's okay, we'll just pretend you're James Cameron. He's a bit taller and a bit richer than me. But I'm so moved and honored to be here with you all. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what it means to be a writer and what it means to be a filmmaker. And I can tell you that it isn't as glamorous as it sounds. I'm also a youth worker. And there's a reason I still have that job. But this is an Indian story. It's a British story. It's a South African story. It's a Japanese story. It's a world human-centered story. One of the privileges of being the so-called writer is finding the truth, speaking to the people who are really involved, and one of the most delightful experiences I had was coming to being hosted by Arvind. Hello, Arvind. You still got the same gloves you were wearing when I visited you, and they were in Croydon. I'm in Brighton. I said, "Oh my word! There's a gentleman who's on this ship that lives less than an hour away from me." So I went and I met Arvind and Bina and Aruna, and you welcomed me into your home. Actually, the first question that Arvind said to me, he opened the door and he said, "Have you got the money?" And I said, "No." He said, "That's okay. You can bring it to me later." He said, "But don't tell my girlfriend you're here." And I do think it's time you two got married, I have to say. And it's, again, what is this story about? It's about human beings. And I can only say so much because Mr. Solanki's made me sign some NDAs, but it is very much the story that connects the present with the past. And it's attempting to honor both the victims and the survivors. So, finding the light in the dark, the journey that continues despite one that was stopped so abruptly, trying to tunnel through the trauma while still acknowledging the losses and the trauma. We all know the world needs more stories of the human spirit right now. I think we all agree. And I will do my best, but I can see from this evening that my work is certainly cut out for me, and I really invite you to come and speak with me, or invite me to your home and I'll come and have some lovely coffee as you made for me. But this story will only happen with the more knowledge I can accrue and understand. And it's really, it's my pen, but it's your words. So the documentary, I'm standing a little bit alone here. We have a doctor who can't be with us today, Marco Federici. He is an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Sadly, has to deal with a root canal, so he's having some emergency dental work done. I am not a documentary filmmaker. I'm a scriptwriter, so I'm dealing with the fictionalized version of the true events. Marco is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, and I met him in Cannes. And I approached him with this story, and what we constantly come up against, and I'm sure you understand this, is nobody has heard of this. And we have spoken to Disney India, who said, well, we love to sing and dance, you know, but this is not going to be a Bollywood film. But nobody has heard of this. And I have made a point of asking people 3 times in Cannes, MIPCOM, the biggest film festival in the world, film conference in the world, you know, have you heard of the SS Tilawa? No. So there's a lot of intrigue, and Marco has done an exceptional job of putting together the material, and he brings the professionalism and the accreditation that a documentary needs to get off the ground. And it was in doing my research for the fictional script that I realized not only is the fictional story you know, strong and poignant, but the real story, Arvin's story, Mr. Masil's story, Mr. Mohammed's story, Mr. Javan's story, and the list goes on and on. I think we have a whole series here. So what I can tell you is this, is we do have a trailer to show you in a moment. We have currently, we are currently pitching this to the BBC, to ITV, to Disney India, who own National Geographic, surprise, surprise, to Channel 4. And I can also tell you that the actress and presenter Sunetra Sarkar, who I happen to know and I've worked with, has taken a great interest in this and has agreed to attach herself to the project. So in this very boring film world, the more talent you can attach, the more likely it is to happen. And going back to the first thing Arvin said to me is, have you got the money? That's exactly what we have to say to the broadcasters. It does require them to commission this. So we are working towards it, and I'm really excited about the script. We're on draft 2 now. I look forward to your extensive notes. Dear God, please help me. And I think with that we should show the trailer. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you for having me.
Tilawa, the untold story of India's greatest maritime tragedy, where the dreams of an innocent generation were shattered by war.
My mother used to talk about this. It was not as though they were going on a holiday. They were going back to work.
You have about 732 passengers, 222 crew, and 4 gunners that are making their way from Bombay, India to Durban, South Africa. There was about 6,000 tons of cargo, including 60 tons of silver bullion, about 2,390 odd bars.
In the dead of night, it was for some strange reason torpedoed, not once, but twice, by the Japanese Imperial Army. It destroyed the ship and killed 280 people.
What they must have gone through. Screams, people screaming for help, but no one there to tell.
Today I remember my mother a lot. Because due to her, today I am surviving.
She carried me and she tied me up in a shawl at the back, you know. And then slowly, slowly from the rope she came down to the lifeboat.
It's a memory I will never, ever forget.
There's going to be other families out there like ours whose, you know, whose families perished and they don't really know about the story or don't know anything about it.
We have lost loved ones, you know, and lost them in very tragic circumstances. That memory has to be kept alive, perpetuated, and brought to the world.
Thank you for that. Absolutely amazing. So as we conclude, a few more minutes, so we are running a little bit late, but thank you for bearing with us tonight. Our other special guest tonight is Councillor Dominic Mabang, who's the Mayor of Royal Greenwich. Councillor, or Dr. Councillor Dominic Mabang, was first elected as a councillor in 2018, representing Woolwich Riverside Ward, and in 2022 got re-elected for Woolwich Dockyard Ward, where he has lived for 24 years. So we'd like to invite you to the platform. Thank you.
Namaste. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I stand here on behalf of the Royal Borough of Greenwich as the mayor to say a big thank you for the organizers who have actually brought this one to our knowledge, because this is something that we have not even read anywhere. And I think Marcel was absolutely right. Why is it not known? Why is it not in our history books? Because that time, Britain was in charge of India. The World War was taking place at the time. So why is it that we don't have that on our records or in our history books? So I will first acknowledge the presence of the first premier Indian British politician, Mr. Keith Vaz, who earlier on spoke and said it's his first time here. I will try to make sure that you come here again the second time, because I think your presence here is very, very exciting for all of us and the people who have come from different places as well. As one of the persons who have actually more or less brought a lot of people into politics, especially the minority. I will also want to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues, councillors, are here also this evening. All senior citizens, especially the survivors of this very, very heartbreaking, episode that took place. For all the stories we heard this evening, and more especially, Emil and your dad. I think we deserve to give a big applause for what has happened. Now, thank you for inviting me today, commemorating the 81st anniversary of the sinking of the SS Tilawa. I am pleased to welcome you here to the Royal Borough of Greenwich this evening. Our borough has the richness of culture and traditions as well as maritime history. When we speak about being a royal borough, I think it is important for people who possibly don't know, that once upon a time, we had the like of Buckingham Palace in the Royal Borough of Greenwich because King Henry VIII was living in Eltham. We still have the King's troops, over 170 horses still in the Royal Borough of Greenwich. In the Royal Naval College here, you just need to go across there and see the wonders of it being a royal borough, and especially Queen Anne also lived in the Royal Borough here. The house is still there. And we also know the first Queen Elizabeth I was also born in the Royal Borough of Greenwich. So you are once more welcome to our Royal Borough of Greenwich. And I'm happy that this event is taking place in the history of UK here in our Royal Borough of Greenwich. And thank you for organizing this event this evening to spread awareness and to inform others of this tragic place of history. It is important to preserve this maritime history. And as already mentioned, I think this one deserves not only films or documentary, but it also deserves more investigation on legal terms as to what should happen to the families of the survivors, especially of what we heard tonight. Your own thoughts on what you thought of the story, program, and address comments to the survivors, other families interviewed, and audiences in general. And of course, the interviewer, thank you very much for bringing up the flavor or for making us to understand what actually happened, because all what was said here is something that I think, I've got my fellow councillor here, we will be sharing this with the council as well, for them to know that this happened, and the local authorities should be able to be interested in whatever is happening in the maritime place here. And to thank also the two known survivors, especially Mrs. Maggart, who has come all the way from the USA. Also Mr. Jani, who lives in South London here with us, and myself for the kind of recount of whatever happened with your family members. Losing your parents and your two siblings was definitely something that, you know, one cannot forget about that. One thing that is also important is we want to make sure that the purpose of this, that the tragedy is acknowledged, that we will be able to memorize the loss of lives. We should also be able to remember the ordeal, what they went through. And for myself being alive today as well, you know, when you enter a plane, they tell you that if there's any trouble, first of all, take care of yourself before you look after your child. But I want to believe your mother took care of you before she thought of herself. And that's why you are alive today. So a big applause to your mother for that he has done. I said, I will say, let's work on further research on this one, get a lot of information. As mentioned already, investigate further about what actually happened as well, because, you know, we still have Japan, we have the Japanese authority, they are still there. They should be able to give information as to what happened and why was it that this was a passenger one and then they did what they did. And I believe that that is where the lawyers will be able to take the matter to the best of the survivors of this tragedy. And finally, I just want to say that was 1942. We are in 2023. We are in 2023, and we have these terrible, terrible tragedies happening in the world today, especially that of Ukraine and Russia, now lately Israel and also Palestine. What I go around to tell and mention to people is, whether you are a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian, let's pray to our gods and our God that God will touch these hardened leaders to soften themselves and allow peace to exist. Because when you look at the television, you feel for all what is happening. And I just pray that people will understand that even with our scientific development, we have not been able, nobody has ever been able to create a human life, and therefore has no right to take another person's life. So once more, thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for inviting us as well. We will also, in the council, as I mentioned, we will mention this to our leaders as well, and make sure that we take interest in what has happened and will possibly also be part of the story. Once more, thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure having all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for those very strong, encouraging words. You know, earlier we had the opportunity to hear from Mr. Mervyn Marcia, who lost his parents and siblings. 1 year after the tragedy, at the age of 14, Mervyn wrote a poem about the SS Tilawa. Well, certainly would be an honor to have Mervyn come and read this poem to you, and joining him will be Mrs. Mangat and Mr. Jani, please.
Sorry? Stand in front of the microphone. Yeah. As said, I composed this poem when I was a 14-year-old schoolboy. I'm now a 95-year-old, nearly, old man. Yeah. Here it goes. My mother was snatched at an early age. My father soon followed that same old stage and left us 3 brothers, all helpless and alone, to bear the yoke that they had borne. My mother's death took place at home, where all of us did weep and mourn. But my father's was a death at sea. It tore our hearts and orphaned 3. My father, with stepmom and children 3, was sailing to Africa full of glee. He smilingly said, "I'll come back soon." But we knew not death would call so soon. So sudden that God's willing, so swift the deep sea had swallowed them up, oh destiny. No time to say farewell, no time to say wait. Death's cold gatekeeper had opened the gate. And now that he's gone, we can murmur not, but trust in God, for that's our lot. And trusting in him who reigns on high, we'll patiently wait till the end draws nigh. So Daddy and Mummy, soon shall we meet, when death has silenced our last heartbeat. There together we'll live forever and ever. In heaven so beautiful, we shall part, no, never. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that lovely, touching poem. Well, the time has arrived to officially acknowledge the forgotten tragedy on British soil and memorialise the loss of life through an official moment of silence. Well, if you're able to stand, please do so as we remember those that were lost. Well, as a gesture of love and acknowledgement, Tilawa 1942 would like to present a plaque of today's commemoration to Mrs. Mangat, who's obviously a survivor, Mr. Jani, survivor, and Mr. Marcial. And representative of the SS Tilawa Foundation, South Africa, Mr. Taruntar Mohammed. Well, Mr. Mayor and Emil will present these plaques, after which we will have our photograph capture the group all together.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Smiling. Are you? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Please do take a seat. Thank you very much. And do take a seat, please. Thank you very much. We're nearly there now. Thank you. Well, it certainly has been a fine evening, and remembering on this 81st anniversary of the Tilawa 1942, the forgotten tragedy. Well, this concludes the commemoration of the ill-fated SS Tilawa forgotten tragedy. Can I just like to extend on behalf of the Solanki family, and thank you all for coming and making time out this evening to support this very important evening. A special thank you to the National Maritime Museum team for supporting us with this commemoration, namely Paddy Rogers, Helen Mears, Fern Aldous, and Dr. Aaron Jaffa. Thank you again to Mr. Vaz, who was here earlier on, Mr. Mayor, for your support this evening, and your presence obviously means a lot to us. Also, the back team, I don't know all your names, but thank you very much, the AV team as well. Thank you. Can I also conclude by saying donations towards the work of Tilawa 1942, costs associated with this commemoration can be made online, tilawa1942.com. And as you leave, please make time to have your photographs taken. They mean a lot to us, what we've done today, and they will be on all social platforms related to Tilawa 1942. So do get your photographs taken. Please continue to share our journey through our website, tilawa1942.com, and Tilawa 1942 social platforms as well. Once again, heartfelt thanks for your presence this evening. A safe journey home, and good night.